The small research outpost on the Varelian moon of Kalira was quiet that evening. The sun had set hours ago, leaving the silver-blue landscape glowing faintly under the planet's reflected light. Inside Habitat Unit 3, Ethan Cole sat at his desk, tapping away on his tablet, trying to finish an engineering assignment before his professor's deadline. The hum of the heating system was the only sound in the room. His alien roommate, Zira Vel, sat on the opposite side, reading from a holobook. Her tall, slender frame was relaxed in the chair, her tail lazily swaying behind her. Zira's fur, a soft shade of ash gold, caught the warm light of the overhead lamp. They had been living together for almost 4 months now. When Ethan had been assigned an alien roommate, he didn't know what to expect. Varelians were famous for their discipline and composure, but they also had instincts humans didn't fully understand. Zira had been polite, quiet, and easy to live with. She liked schedules, cleanliness, and silence, perfect for Ethan's study habits. That peace broke when the first storm alert sounded. A sharp chime rang out from the wall panel, and the station's AI spoke in its calm, mechanical voice. "Warning! Incoming plasma storm detected. Estimated duration, 4 days. All personnel remain indoors. External travel prohibited." Ethan looked up from his tablet. 4 days? Zira's ear twitched, but she kept reading. "Plasma storms here can last even longer. You'll get used to it." He frowned. "This is my first one. Back on Earth, storms don't last that long." Zira finally put her book down and stood, walking to the window. Outside, faint streaks of electric light were already flickering across the horizon. "You'll be fine. Just don't go near the outer doors." Within an hour, the storm hit full force. Bright arcs of plasma streaked through the sky, and the wind howled so loudly it seemed to press against the walls. The outpost shuddered from time to time, making Ethan wonder just how strong the storm was. They received a station-wide message confirming all access hatches were now sealed, and power systems would be operating in low-energy mode until the storm passed. No deliveries, no outside visits. Trapped inside. "Well," Ethan muttered, leaning back in his chair, "guess we're stuck with each other for the next 4 days." Zira's tail flicked once, and she gave him a faint smile. "It could be worse. At least I don't snore." They shared a small laugh, but Ethan noticed something. Zira wasn't her usual calm self. Her movements seemed more restless, and she kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Her eyes had a strange, sharp focus, as if she were constantly checking for something unseen. He decided to ignore it, at first. The first day passed slowly. Ethan tried to work on his assignments, but the constant flicker of light outside made it hard to concentrate. The storm's glow seeped through the windows like ghostly fire, and the walls occasionally groaned from the pressure. By the second evening, Ethan couldn't help but notice Zira's strange behavior. She paced around the living room for long stretches, then would suddenly sit and stare at the floor, lost in thought. When he offered her some food, she only took small bites, her ears twitching at every sound. "Something wrong?" Ethan asked finally. She glanced at him, hesitated, then sighed. "It's nothing dangerous. Just the timing is bad." "Bad timing for what?" "For me." She crossed her arms as if bracing herself for an awkward admission. "It's mating season for my species." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. Okay?" Zira rolled her eyes. "Relax. I'm not about to pounce on you or anything, but it does make things complicated." He leaned back. "Complicated how?" She looked toward the window, watching the storm. "Varelians get restless during this season. We're more alert, more easily distracted. We have stronger instincts to protect and watch others. And humans, you smell different now. It's distracting." Ethan chuckled nervously. "So you're saying I smell weird?" Not weird, she corrected quickly. Different. He decided to let the subject drop. If she said she could handle it, he'd believe her. Still, the tension in the air was growing. That night, the storm grew worse. Bright plasma flashes turned the room into a strobe of blue-white light. The wind howled like some massive beast was circling the outpost. Ethan woke in the middle of the night to find Zira standing near the main door, her ears fully upright, eyes narrowed toward the airlock. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice groggy. She didn't turn to him right away. "Something feels wrong. The storm, it's not just wind out there. I smell something else." Ethan rubbed his eyes. "Something else? Like what?" Her tail lashed once, sharply. "I'm not sure yet." They both stood in silence for a long moment, listening. The storm's roar filled the space, but underneath it, there was a faint, irregular sound, like something scraping against metal. Ethan's skin prickled. "Please tell me that's just debris." Zira didn't answer. By morning, the scraping sound was gone, but the tension wasn't. They tried to pass the time with simple things. A board game, cooking a meal together, even watching a few episodes of an old Earth show. But Zira's attention kept wandering to the door and windows. At one point, she moved her chair so she could sit facing the entrance. By the end of the day, the air in the habitat felt heavier. The storm had cut them off completely from the outside world. The communications panel displayed nothing but static. That's when a new alarm suddenly blared. The wall panel flashed red. "Warning, outer seal breach detected at airlock 2. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Breach? How?" Zira was already grabbing her utility belt. "Storm pressure. Maybe debris damage. We need to check it before it gets worse." He followed her to the storage room, where they both pulled on lightweight maintenance suits. They weren't full space suits, but enough to protect them from sudden air pressure drops. The moment they stepped into the corridor, the temperature dropped. The flickering emergency lights cast long shadows on the walls. When they reached airlock 2, Ethan saw it. A hairline crack in the outer seal, small but enough to trigger the pressure warning. He moved to grab the sealant kit, but Zira stopped, him with a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said quietly. Ethan froze. "What is it?" She pointed to the crack. The edges of the metal weren't just split, they were marked. Long, deep scratches ran along the frame like something with claws had tested it. He swallowed. "That's not from the storm, is it?" "No," she said, her voice low. "That's from something alive." The storm raged on outside, but now Ethan felt something far more dangerous might be waiting with it. The storm outside had no mercy. Plasma streaks lit up the sky like angry lightning, each flash painting the inside of the corridor in ghostly white for a split second. The wind's howl was so constant, it almost blended into the background. But Ethan Cole could not stop thinking about what he had seen on the airlock. The claw marks. When they got back inside their habitat, Zira sealed the inner door and ran a final systems check on the airlock. The small crack had been filled with sealant, pressure levels were stable, and the alert faded from the wall screen. Still, she stayed there a little longer, scanning the readings twice. "You think whatever made those marks is still out there?" Ethan asked, leaning against the wall. Zira didn't answer right away. She tapped a few more commands into the console. "If it is, the storm will keep it from getting inside for now, but..." She glanced at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "It was testing the structure. That's not random animal behavior." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Great. So we might be trapped in here with a storm outside and a monster scratching at the door." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's one way to put it." The next day, the outpost seemed quieter, but not in a good way. The constant flicker of light outside was almost hypnotic, and the low vibrations through the floor made everything feel unsettled. Ethan tried to distract himself by fixing one of their small drone assistants, the kind that helped carry equipment around. The station. He spread the tools and parts out on the table in their shared living area. Zira sat nearby, pretending to read, but Ethan could tell her eyes kept drifting toward the main hatch every few minutes. Her tail twitched more often than usual. "You're jumpier than I am," he said without looking up from the drone's open panel. She didn't deny it. "It's not just the storm. This season makes me more aware of my surroundings. I hear things others don't. Smell things, too." Ethan arched an eyebrow. "Like what? What do you smell?" Her ears angled slightly back. Predator scent. Faint. Almost masked by the storm, but it's there. That made Ethan pause. "And you didn't think that was worth telling me earlier?" She gave him a flat look. "Would you have slept well knowing something was hunting? Nearby?" "Fair point," he admitted. As the hours passed, Ethan noticed more changes in Zira. She moved with quick bursts of energy, pacing when she wasn't doing anything. Sometimes she'd start a conversation, speaking faster than normal, then suddenly cut herself off and go quiet again. Her gaze was sharper, her ears constantly turning toward small noises. At one point, she stopped mid-sentence and stared toward the far wall. "Something shifted outside," she murmured. Ethan listened hard but heard nothing beyond the wind. "I think you're just—" The lights flickered, interrupting him. They looked at each other. The power came back a second later, but now the room felt darker, colder. That evening, Zira tried to focus by helping Ethan with the drone repairs. She handed him tools, made suggestions, and even showed him how to recalibrate the sensor array. For a moment, it felt normal, just two roommates stuck in bad weather passing the time. But then another alarm blipped softly on the wall screen. Not as loud as the previous breach alert, but enough to draw their attention. Warning, temperature. Drop detected in corridor C5. "That's near the outer wall," Ethan said, checking the station map. Zira was already strapping on her tool belt. If the wall's losing heat, it could mean another breach starting. He grabbed his own jacket and flashlight. "Let's go before it gets worse." The corridor was dim, lit only by the emergency lights. Their footsteps echoed as they moved. Ethan's breath misted faintly in the air. It was definitely colder here. They found the spot near the far corner where frost was starting to form along the metal paneling. Zira ran her scanner along the seam and frowned. No breach yet, but pressure is slightly lower here. Something weakened the insulation. Ethan crouched and shone his light along the floor. His stomach twisted. "Zira, look at this." Near the base of the wall were more marks. Long, deep scratches in the metal. They were fresh. Zira's tail lashed. "It's moving around the station." The idea that something was circling them, trying different points of entry, made Ethan's skin crawl. They patched the weakened section quickly, but neither of them felt at ease afterward. On the way back, the lights flickered again. This time, they didn't just blink, they stayed dimmer than before. Back in the habitat, they sat across from each other at the table. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "If this thing is smart enough to test different walls, it might try the main hatch next." Zira nodded slowly. "It might, which means we should be ready." He sighed. "Ready. How? We've got toolkits, a maintenance drone, and some emergency supplies. That's it." "We also have brains," she replied. "Sometimes that's enough." They spent the next hour going over the station's schematics. Ethan suggested placing motion sensors near all the outer walls, but Zira said the storm's interference might make them unreliable. Instead, they set up small makeshift noise traps, dangling bits of metal that would clink if something touched them. While they worked, Ethan tried to lighten the mood. "So, is this your idea of a fun holiday season?" Zira snorted softly. "For a Varelian during mating season. It's not the worst," he smirked. "What's the worst?" She gave him a pointed look. "Being stuck in a cave with 3 other Varelians and no food. We tend to get Competitive, Ethan chuckled. I think I'll take the monster outside over that. Later that night, they were both in the common room. Zira was curled up in a chair, her tail wrapped around, her legs, eyes half closed but alert. Ethan sat at the desk, pretending to work on his assignment, but really just listening to the storm. That's when they heard it. A faint, metallic thunk. They both froze. Another thunk, followed by a dragging sound. It's at the hatch, Zira whispered. Ethan's heart started pounding. They moved quietly to the entryway. The outer door camera was still functional, so Ethan tapped the panel to bring up the feed. At first, all they saw was static from the storm's interference. Then a shadow moved across the screen, massive, low to the ground, with faint glints, where eyes might be. The creature stopped right in front of the hatch. For a few seconds, it just stood there, head turning slightly as if listening. Then slowly, it raised one clawed limb and scratched along the metal. The sound made Ethan's teeth clench. Zira's fur bristled. It's testing again. Before they could react, the creature suddenly backed away into the storm, vanishing into the white blur. Ethan exhaled slowly. It knows we're here. Zira's voice was quiet, but firm. And it's not going to give up easily. They decided to sleep in shifts that night. Zira insisted on taking the first watch, her instincts making her more alert than Ethan could ever be in this situation. He tried to sleep, but the storm and the memory of those glowing eyes kept him restless. When he finally drifted off, it felt like only minutes before Zira shook him awake. It's back, she whispered. Through the camera feed, they saw the creature again, but this time, it wasn't at the hatch. It was moving toward another section of the station wall. Zira grabbed her tool belt. If it weakens that wall, we'll have another breach. We need to stop it. Ethan stared at her. Stop it? How? Go outside in this? She looked him dead in the eye. If we don't, it's only a matter of time before it gets in. This time, the danger wasn't just the storm. It was the fact that something intelligent and patient was hunting them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The moment Zira said they needed to stop the creature, Ethan felt his stomach twist. Wait, he said, glancing toward the window where lightning split the sky in white-blue flashes. You're talking about going out there, in the middle of a plasma storm? Zira was already fastening her tool belt. If we don't, it will keep weakening the walls until it finds a way in. Then the storm won't be the only thing trying. To kill us? Ethan hesitated. She wasn't wrong. Still, the idea of stepping into that raging storm while something with claws and glowing eyes stalked around was almost enough to make him say no. Almost. He exhaled through his nose. Fine, but if I get fried, I'm haunting you. A faint smile tugged at Zira's mouth. Fair enough. Suiting up, they went to the equipment locker and pulled out the lightweight hazard suits. These weren't meant for full spacewalks, but they would shield against wind debris, sudden pressure changes, and most of the storm's plasma discharge. Ethan slipped into his suit, tightening the seals at his neck and wrists. Zira moved with sharp efficiency, adjusting her own suit while checking her tools, a portable plasma cutter, a compact welding unit, and a multi-tool scanner. Ethan grabbed a high-powered flashlight and a small emergency sealant gun. Before they stepped toward the airlock, Zira looked at him seriously. Stay close to me. The storm will mess with your balance, and the static charges in the air can be dangerous. If you feel your hair stand on end, crouch immediately. Great, Ethan muttered, because I wasn't nervous enough already. Into the storm. The outer door slid open, and the storm slammed into them instantly. Wind roared like an angry giant, and sparks of blue plasma danced across the surface of the station walls. The ground was slick with ice-like frost from the sudden temperature changes. Ethan had expected total chaos, but the suit's visor dampened the blinding flashes and muffled the worst of the noise. Still, he had to force each step against the wind. Zira moved with surprising stability, her feline balance keeping her low and grounded. She led the way toward the section of the station where the creature had last been spotted. The storm swirled around them, but she kept her eyes scanning the shadows between the arcs of light. Ethan stayed right behind her, trying not to think about the fact that somewhere out there, something was watching them. The first encounter. They reached the damaged section of wall, and Ethan saw the fresh claw marks, deep gouges that exposed the inner insulation. The creature had been working here for a while. Zira crouched, scanning the marks with her multi-tool. It's testing for weak points. These aren't random swipes. It's looking for a spot to break through. Ethan kept his flashlight sweeping. The storm-blurred horizon. At first, all he saw was wind and plasma arcs. Then, movement. Zira, he said quietly. She didn't look up. I see it. From the swirling storm, the shadow emerged, huge, low to the ground, with a hunched back and long limbs ending in hooked claws. Its eyes reflected the stormlight in an eerie, pale glow. The creature froze when it spotted them, as if deciding whether to attack. Ethan's pulse spiked. Tell me we're going back inside. Not yet, Zira said calmly. If we run, it will follow. We need to scare it off or disable it. The distraction plan Zira quickly explained her idea. Use the maintenance drone as a distraction. The drone could be loaded with one of her scent tags, a small device normally used for tracking equipment. The tag would carry her scent into the storm, drawing the creature away from the station. Ethan didn't love the idea of using her scent, but it made sense. And how do we make sure it doesn't just come back? We keep the drone moving, far enough until the storm buries the trail. Then we fix the wall before it returns. It was risky, but they didn't have a better option. Execution. Ethan set the drone on the ground, shielding it from the wind while Zira attached the scent tag and programmed the flight path. Once activated, the drone's rotors whined softly, lifting it just above the ground. Go! Zira commanded, and the drone zipped into the storm, weaving between gusts of wind and plasma arcs. The creature's head turned instantly, nostrils flaring. It let out a low, guttural sound that vibrated in Ethan's chest. Then it bolted after the drone, disappearing into the storm. Move! Zira said. They rushed to the damaged wall. Zira worked quickly with the plasma cutter, smoothing the jagged edges of the claw marks, while Ethan applied the sealant foam to reinforce the insulation. The foam hissed as it expanded, sealing the gaps and locking into the grooves. The wind howled harder, and static electricity crawled across Ethan's visor. His hair began to rise under his helmet. Zira? She glanced at him and barked. Crouch! They both dropped low as a massive plasma arc struck the wall above them, sending a blinding white flash through the air. The metal groaned, but held. The return. The patch was nearly done when Ethan's stomach dropped. He caught movement through the haze again. The creature was back. Zira's ears flattened against her helmet. It's faster than I thought. The thing didn't charge right away. Instead, it prowled in a slow circle, its glowing eyes locked on them. Lightning illuminated its shape, long, sinewy limbs, a narrow head, and ridges along its back that seemed to spark faintly in the plasma. Light, Ethan's voice was tight. Please tell me you have a plan B. She pulled out a flare from her belt. Yeah, stay behind me. Driving it off, Zira ignited the flare, and bright red light cut through the blue storm glow. She waved it slowly, stepping toward the creature. The flare hissed and spat sparks, and the creature flinched, baring its teeth. It let out a sharp, echoing cry that made Ethan's ears ache even through the helmet. Then suddenly, it lunged. Ethan stumbled back, but Zira moved like lightning. She sidestepped the charge, slashing the flare toward its face. The creature recoiled with a snarl, stumbling in the wind. Go! Zira shouted. They ran, forcing their way back toward the airlock. The creature followed for a few paces, but then stopped, pacing at the edge of the storm as if unwilling to come closer to the station's bright lights. Back inside, The airlock closed behind them with a heavy thud. Ethan ripped off his helmet, gulping down the warm, filtered air. His heart was still hammering. That, he said between breaths, was insane. Zara removed her helmet, her fur damp with static charge. It worked. The wall is fixed, and now we know how it reacts to light and fire. Yeah, but it's still out there, Ethan said. What if it waits for the storm to die down and then comes back? Zara's expression was unreadable. Then we make sure it doesn't survive that long. A moment of calm. For the first time in hours, they sat down, drinking water and catching their breath. The storm still howled outside, but the sound felt different now, less like an unstoppable force, more like background noise to a larger problem. Ethan glanced at Zara. You didn't have to come out there with me. You could have just told me to do it. Her tail flicked lightly. Leaving you out there alone would have been stupid, and I don't do stupid things. He smirked faintly. Guess I'm lucky you're my roommate. Zara didn't smile back, but her eyes softened for a moment. Maybe you are. The new problem, just when they thought they could rest, the wall panel beeped with a new alert. Warning, motion detected in Storage Bay 2. Ethan sat up straighter. That's inside the station. Zara's ears went rigid. It found a way in. The storm outside suddenly didn't matter anymore. The real danger was now walking the same halls as them. The corridors of the small habitat ring felt too quiet. Outside the thick window panels, the gas giant's swirling storms cast golden light through the room, but inside, the air felt heavy. Kai walked back and forth, hands deep in his pockets, unsure if the silence was safety or danger. Talara was sitting by the table, her silver hair hanging loose, eyes watching the patterns on the floor instead of him. She had been avoiding his gaze for most of the day, and that bothered him more than anything. The alien girl who usually spoke her mind now seemed locked inside her thoughts. You haven't said a word in hours, Kai said finally, stopping, in front of her. She looked up slowly, her pale green eyes shimmering in the soft light. Because I'm trying to control myself. Kai frowned. From what? We've been fine so far. Her jaw tightened. You think so? Every moment we spend in the same room, every time I hear your voice, it's harder. She stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. Do you even understand what this season does to my kind? Kai hesitated. He had read the colony briefing files on her species before they became roommates, but he hadn't memorized every detail. It's instinct, right? Like biology? Pushing you to mate, she finished bluntly. To find someone and not let them go. It's not just desire, Kai. It's need. And when you're near... She trailed off, struggling with the next words. It's stronger. He tried to stay calm. You're saying you're... He stopped himself before saying something stupid. You're in danger of losing control? Her silence was answer. Enough. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the hum of the habitat's life support systems filling the gap between them. Kai felt a mix of emotions, concern, curiosity, and something else he didn't want to admit to himself. Then maybe I should keep my distance, he said finally. Talara shook her head sharply. No, that would make it worse. He blinked. Worse? How? She walked toward the window, pressing her hand against the cold glass as lightning flashed across the gas giant's clouds. If I'm alone, my mind will focus only on the need. With you here, talking, distracting me, I can keep some control, but it's a thin line, Kai swallowed. So you're saying the safest thing is to stay together? She turned her head just enough for him to see the faintest hint of a smile. For now. Later that night, they shared dinner at the small metal table, each eating quietly. Kai tried to keep his mind on neutral topics, talking about the maintenance, drones, about the weather patterns on the planet below, anything that didn't touch the growing tension between them. but he noticed her watching him more than usual, her eyes lingering when he spoke, her fingers brushing his hand when she reached for the salt. After the meal, Talara leaned back in her chair. "Kai, you've been patient with me. You could have requested transfer to another section, but you didn't." He shrugged. "You're my friend. I'm not leaving you alone in this." Her voice was quieter now. "There's something I need to tell you before things get harder to hide." Kai waited. She stood and stepped closer until they were only a meter apart. "When this season began, I thought I could handle it. I thought you were just another human. But I was wrong." He raised an eyebrow. "Wrong how?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "I don't just want any partner. I want you." Kai's breath caught. "Talara, I know it's dangerous," she cut in quickly. "I know I'm supposed to keep control until it passes. But every time you help me, every time you make me laugh, it pulls me closer. I can't pretend anymore." Kai took a step back, not in rejection, but in shock. He had suspected something, but hearing it out loud was different. He searched for the right words. "Talara, this could be trouble." "I know," she admitted. "If my instincts take over, I might not think about what you want. That's why I'm telling you now, so you can decide if you want to stay or lock yourself in another module until this is over." Kai looked at her for a long time, weighing the choice. Part of him wanted to run, to avoid the risk, but another part, the stubborn, loyal part, refused to leave her alone when she was struggling. "I'm not going anywhere," he said finally. Her shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in days, she let herself smile fully. "Then we'll have to be careful. Very careful." The next few days were a test of that promise. They worked together on repairs, shared meals, and kept conversation going to distract her from the pull of her instincts. Sometimes it worked. Other times, Kai caught her watching him with a look that made his pulse race. But he trusted her, and she trusted him, at least enough to try. One evening, while running diagnostics in the engineering bay, the habitat shook with sudden force. Red lights flashed and a warning alarm blared. "Impact detected," the AI voice announced. "Micrometeorite breach in Section 4. Kai and Talara exchanged a look before running toward the airlock. They suited up quickly, then moved through the dimly lit corridor toward the damaged area. The breach was small, but dangerous. Air hissed out through a jagged hole in the wall, frost forming on the edges. "I'll seal it," Kai said, grabbing a patch kit. "No," Talara replied firmly. "You guide me. Your human suit can't handle sudden temperature drops as well as mine." He hesitated, but she was already moving toward the breach. Working quickly, she applied the seal, hands steady despite the cold. When the last patch was in place, she turned back toward him, but the floor trembled again. Another impact sent her stumbling forward. Kai caught her, his arms wrapping around her to steady her. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The sound of their breathing filled the helmets, and her hands tightened on his suit. They stared at each other through the visor glass. "This is dangerous," she murmured. "Yeah," he replied, "but not just because of the meteorites." Back. Inside, safe again, they removed their helmets. The air between them was thicker than before, charged with unspoken thoughts. Talara took a step forward, her expression serious. "Kai, I'm close to losing control. Very close. I need to know if it happens. Will you stop me?" Kai didn't answer right away. His mind was a storm of conflicting feelings, but deep down, he already knew his answer. The storm outside had begun to fade, but inside the small habitat, the danger was still very real. The motion alert that had sounded hours before was not a false alarm. Something was inside the station, moving silently through the metal halls. Ethan sat on the edge of the bunk, his hands trembling slightly as he loaded a makeshift weapon, a heavy metal pipe they had found in the storage room. His usual calm was gone, replaced by a tense focus. Zyra was beside him, sharpening her claws against a rough stone she had in her toolkit, eyes sharp and ready. "We can't let it roam freely," Zyra said quietly. "If it attacks the life support systems or breaches the main control room, the whole station could be lost." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, but it's not just any creature. It's smart and strong. I don't want to underestimate it." They moved together through the dim hallways, the lights flickering, weakly from the storm's earlier damage. Zyra's heightened senses led the way. She sniffed the air and listened carefully. Ethan kept the pipe ready, every sound making his heart beat faster. Suddenly, Zyra stopped, ears flat. "It's near. Close." They crouched behind a corner, and Ethan peeked around. In the flickering light, a large shape moved slowly. The creature was like nothing he had seen before. Sleek but muscular, with glowing eyes and sharp claws that scraped softly against the metal floor. It paused, sniffing the air, then let out a low growl. Ethan felt the sound deep in his chest. The creature was clearly hunting. Zyra whispered, "We need to trap it." They backed away slowly, luring the creature toward the central hub of the station, a room with heavy doors designed to seal in emergencies. If they could get it trapped inside, they might have a chance to survive until help arrived. As they moved, the creature followed, always just out of reach but never losing interest. Ethan's mind raced, thinking of every possible plan. When they reached the heavy doors, Zyra slammed the control panel with her palm. The doors began to close, but the creature lunged suddenly, catching the edge of one with its claws. The metal bent, but held. Ethan ran to the manual override and pulled the lever with all his strength. Slowly, the doors slid together, sealing the creature inside. For a moment there was silence. Then the creature roared, slamming against the metal, shaking the whole room. Zyra pressed her back against the wall, breathing heavily. "It won't last long like that." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. "We need to get the rescue team here fast." The storm was finally ending when the rescue signal was picked up. Outside, a team arrived in armored suits, prepared for any threat. Ethan and Zyra explained everything: the creature, the mating season instincts, the storm damage. The rescuers moved cautiously, capturing the creature with specialized equipment. It growled and struggled, but the sedatives soon took effect. With the creature secured, Ethan and Zyra finally felt safe. Later, in the quiet of the habitat, Zyra looked at Ethan with tired eyes. "I'm sorry for the way I acted." "Mating season? It makes me unpredictable." Ethan smiled gently. "You did what you had to do. I'm just glad we made it through together." She nodded. "You're more than a roommate now," he chuckled. "Well, I hope next storm we get isn't quite so exciting." Zyra's tail curled around his leg. No promises. They sat side by side, the storm outside now just a memory, and a new understanding between them.